You can have a seat. Welcome. You guys look great on this Easter Sunday. I was told earlier that I look like an Easter basketball referee because Jesus is out of there. If you're rolling your eyes, it's fine. You only got like 30 more minutes of this. Got plenty more dad jokes. It's really great to have you here. Welcome on Easter. If you're new, a special welcome to you. We are so grateful that you are here and you've chosen to worship with us. A special sacred day that we gather every year to focus on the resurrection of the King. Now, here's where we're going to start today. We live in an imperfect, broken world, and my life as a pastor, it's kind of unique in the perspective that it gives me because I'm invited into some really beautiful, sacred moments. I think about some of the moments that I've got to share with some of you. I've got to share some of you coming to faith in Christ. What a special sacred moment. I've got a chance to baptize some of you as a pastor. I've got a chance to walk with you through some of just the most precious of memories, the birth of a child, even celebrating the life of a child and birthdays. As a pastor, I get invited to really special sacred moments. But also as a pastor, I get invited into some really difficult moments. Moments that are full of suffering and heartache. Even this past year, I just think about some of the invitations I've got to walk alongside of people. And it reminds me just how broken things are. I watched two dear, dear, dear friends battle illness for a long time. And if you've ever had to walk with somebody through that journey, it is terrible. And you reach the end of it and it breaks you. It hurts. Like over the last year, I've had to walk through some of that with friends. I've had to walk through marriages ending of people you consider friends, and you're like, man, I thought you guys were gonna be together forever, and then this happens, and just the heartache of that's difficult to walk through even for a pastor. I get invited into these really beautiful moments, but also these moments that are just full of pain and heartache. And I know that while my experience is unique, just being a pastor, it's not terribly unique in the sense of you have walked through very similar things. You've experienced loss, you've experienced disappointment. Maybe it's career disappointment, maybe it's a loss of a loved one, loss of health. Maybe you've struggled and you've had to overcome a lot of different things in your life. I know, happy Easter, welcome to Redemption Church. But we're dealing with the real stuff right now. The real stuff that life throws at us. And it's not easy to navigate. And so here's what I would submit to you on this day. The resurrection is something that you and I need. Not just believe, but at the deepest parts of our being, we so desperately need a conquering king, a resurrected king. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at a story, it's post-resurrection, in which there's two obscure figures who encounter the resurrected king and how it transforms so much of their life. So we'll start in Luke chapter 24, verse 13. And this is what it says. That very day, two of them were going to a village named Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they were talking with each other about all of these things that had happened. So let's just set some context here. We're talking about the resurrection Sunday. So the day that Jesus was resurrected from the day this story happens, and we're told that there's two individuals. And we're gonna know the name of one here in verse 18, it's Cleopas, but we don't really know anything about Cleopas. Church tradition and history would say potentially this is the brother of Joseph, Jesus's earthly stepfather. So maybe this is Jesus' step uncle, but the other man or the other person is just not named. And so you have on Resurrection Sunday, two obscure figures, and they're making a journey from Jerusalem to Emmaus, 7-mile journey. And all they can talk about or think about is what has happened in Jerusalem. See, Jerusalem, the Passover had just happened. And of course, the events of Jesus had turned this city upside down. I mean, think about it. It's Sunday, but the prior Sunday, Jesus arrives in the area with much fanfare. So it's Palm Sunday. So people are waving palm branches. They're singing Hosanna, glory to God. I mean, they're praising the King. And then you have like Monday and Tuesday, and Jesus challenging the religious elite. He's overthrowing tables in the temple. They're plotting to kill him. Then they see the betrayal of Jesus. Everybody gets to see the public beating of Jesus. They get to see his public crucifixion, and now he is buried. And so all they can do is talk about what has happened. They're consumed with it on this journey. And then the most unexpected person arrives. Verse 15. While they were talking and discussing together, Jesus himself drew near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What is this conversation that you are holding with each other as you walk?" And they stood still, looking sad. So what happens essentially here is Jesus arrives, and we're not told why, but they don't recognize Jesus. Maybe it's because the resurrected body of Jesus was not like the 33-year-old body that they had known and seen publicly. We're unsure. We know that he bears the marks of the crucifixion, but what does his resurrected body look like? Maybe he's wearing clothing that's obscuring his face, so they can't actually see his face. Maybe pain. You know this, if you've ever walked through a really painful moment or experience, pain has a way of narrowing your vision. Just again, journeying through a lot of disappointment, grief, sorrow with people, I've learned this. The ability to think coherently, the ability to even see what is clearly in front of you is difficult the more pain you are experiencing. And so maybe these guys are just full on experiencing so much pain that they couldn't fathom a resurrected Jesus. We're not told why, but we know that they do not initially recognize him. And he goes, "Hey, what are you guys talking about as you're walking?" And then this ensues, verse 18. Then one of them, named Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?" Kind of a snarky comment. I'm not sure I would make that snarky comment. Like, are you a complete fool? Everybody's talking about it. Everybody in Jerusalem knows what is happening. Where have you been? Verse 19. And he, Jesus, said to them, "What things?" And they said to him concerning Jesus of Nazareth, a man who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and rulers delivered him to be condemned to death and crucified him. But listen to this, verse 21. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the third day since these things happened. Moreover, some women of our company amazed us. They were at the tomb early in the morning, and when they did not find his body, they came back saying that they had even seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but him they did not see. Jesus asks what happened as they're making this journey, and of course they share. Now, here's what I've learned. Whenever you allow somebody to truly share their story, if you listen hard enough, the pain, the joy will surface in the telling of the story. And what we see here is the pain of the story is beginning to surface. So, of course, they tell, hey, Jesus has been crucified. He has died. But if you listen closely enough, you hear the pain. They said, we'd hoped. We'd hoped he was the one. We'd hoped that he was the Messiah. He was the one that was going to make things right. He was going to overthrow the Roman Empire, the government. Israel was going to return to a sovereign nation. That's what we were putting our hopes in. We hoped that he was going to be sitting on the throne right now. And that even us as his disciples would be tasting the fruit of the king being in power right here, right now. That's what we had hoped for. And of course, if we ever have a hope that is unmet. It makes us sick. It says this in Proverbs 13:12, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a desire fulfilled is a tree of life. And so as they're telling the story, you hear of hopelessness. You see the sadness in their eyes. You can see it visibly. I mean, we're told they are sad right now. And not just that, they seem a little confused, right? They're like, all right, there's these women that were a part of our group, and they said that he's not there, and that amazed us. We were not expecting that. And some other disciples ran over there to the tomb, and he was not there. They don't know what to make of this. They are hopeless, sad, and confused. Here's what I have learned as you walk with people that are going through difficulty. Disappointment creates sadness and confusion. And this is exactly where these two men are. Sadness and confusion about life. They don't even recognize Jesus. And then Jesus responds. How is he to respond to their sadness, to their grief, to their hopelessness? Verse 25. And he said to them, O foolish ones, and slow of heart to believe all the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary that Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory? And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. Pause here for a moment. He responds by saying, you guys are slow to believe. You're slow to understand right now. And what he does is he opens up the scripture. Here's what we believe about the Bible. The Bible is one comprehensive redemptive story. It's not just a collection of random stories and books that have just been thrown together and we can read them in isolation. No, there is a thread of redemption that goes all the way from Genesis to Revelation. And it's a comprehensive whole. And so what Jesus does is he starts all the way back at the very beginning with Moses, Genesis. And then he begins to unpack for them how the entirety of the scripture has been pointing to this moment. You think about Genesis 3, the moment sin enters into the world, a son is promised. A great son who will conquer what has occurred. You go a little bit further, the law, and we read that we are not able to live up to the standards of God. And so there becomes this longing for the Son to make things right. We can't make things right. We need him. You read about the sacrificial system in the Old Testament. Sacrifice upon sacrifice. And that's all pointing us to Jesus, who's the once and for all sacrifice. Every great hero that we have in the Old Testament is just a foretaste of what is to come in Christ Jesus. See, the entire Old Testament is longing for and pointing to and foreshadowing this right here, Jesus himself. And so he just opens up the entirety of Scripture going, it's one redemptive story, and guess who's at the center? It's me. And he says something quite profound. He says, it was necessary that the Christ would suffer and then enter into his glory. So his response to their hopelessness, sadness, confusion, was to say, look at the glorified state of the Messiah. Goes on, verse 28. So they drew near to the village to which they were going. He acted as if he were going farther, but they urged him, strongly saying, stay with us, for it is toward evening and the day is now far spent. So he went in to stay with them. And when he was at the table with them, he took the bread and blessed it and broke it and gave it to them. And their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. And they said to each other, did not our hearts burn within us as he talked to us on the road while he opened to us the scriptures? They rose that same hour and returned to Jerusalem. And they found the 11 and those who were gathered together, saying, the Lord has risen indeed and has appeared to Simon. Then they told what had happened on the road and how he was known to them in the breaking of bread. Couple really key moments here. They enter into this house. They're sitting there with Jesus, and all of a sudden, they can actually see Jesus. our culture has heard the resurrection story before. Most people, we're not telling you something new today. You're like, wow, I knew he died, but this whole like resurrection tomb thing coming out of it, this is all new to me. However, much like these men, we have been blinded to actually trusting and receiving this. And so we need God to give us eyes to see the truth of the resurrected King, just like these men needed. And of course, he does. He reveals himself, he breaks bread. They see with clarity, this is who he is. This is the resurrected King. This is his glory. And then he's gone. And then they run back to the disciples 7 miles back in the evening, which, by the way, pretty dangerous endeavor. They run back and they tell them, guess what? We've seen him. He is alive. What you see very, very clearly is there is a profound shift in these two individuals, these two obscure individuals. A profound shift has occurred. And you know what has not shifted? Their circumstances. Their circumstances are still the same. When they run back to the disciples, guess who's still ruling over this area? Rome. Guess what? Jesus is not sitting on a physical throne in this moment. And yet everything had shifted for them. The kingdom that they had in mind had not come to pass. And yet for some reason, there's this fundamental shift in them. Because the resurrection gave them a new heart and new perspective when it came to their pain and suffering and disappointment. Here's what the Bible does not do. You know, the Bible never minimizes the hard stuff that we go through, the pain, the difficulty, but it does add one key word: temporary. So what you and I are experiencing maybe right now, the Bible adds one large caveat to it all. It's only temporary. Why? Because the grave has been conquered. What is will not always be. What we are suffering right now will be made right because the redemptive plans of God have not been fully realized. We live in this odd place in redemptive history. He's already come. He's already secured our salvation. He's already given us a hope beyond the grave, but we know that he's coming again. And so we live in the middle of the already but not yet. And in this middle that we live in, we have to have some way to overcome the difficulties that we face. And the answer is that we are clinging to the resurrected hope. There was a man by the name of Viktor Frankl. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, and he was an Austrian psychologist, and he had survived 3 Nazi concentration camps. Fascinating story. And he observed so much in these concentration camps, right? He observed despair, death, people just giving up, the most heinous crimes this world has ever seen. He witnessed with his own eyes. And yet he made it through. He ends up writing this book. And this is kind of how he summarized his experience. He says this: the people who could see beyond the horizon of the gates of Auschwitz into another age and another time. Those with hope that this was not all there was are the ones who made it through. Powerful. He would also tell of how he had this idea, this hope, that he was picturing himself outside the gates of Auschwitz. And he had a classroom full of students, and he was teaching them psychology and the importance of hope. He was picturing this, and he goes, that was in part why I was able to make it through. And friends, we have such a better picture of how we can make it through. You know, the only way we are able to look beyond the horizon of our disappointment, of our pain, of our suffering that we've been experiencing or have experienced, the only way to look beyond the horizon is to look at a resurrected King. See, right now, there are lots of world religions you could put your faith in. And yet, all of them, you can visit the grave of its founder. But there is one grave that's oddly disappeared, that cannot be visited because it's empty. And because we have a resurrected King, the way that we are able to navigate the hardship and sorrows of life is to look beyond the horizon going, what is will not always be. He's already come, but yet he's not done. And I'm trusting that when he conquered the grave, he conquered every great enemy that you and I are confronted with. And so I have no choice but to put my hope in him. Let me ask you a really pointed question. Where is your hope? Really, just boil it down. You're not thinking about your neighbor, your spouse, your mom, your dad. Like, where's your hope? Where's your confidence? What are you putting it in? Is it riches? They fade. Is it health? That fades. My wife and I had a conversation this week. Being in your 40s, you experience some physical things that you didn't experience before. And so when I drop something on the ground, I have to make a determination. Do I just want to cut my losses and do without that thing? Or do I want to get my kids to help me pick it up? Our health goes. Our stuff goes. Our accomplishments fade with us. Let's be brutally honest. In 100 years, nobody's going to know my name here. So what can I cling to that has eternal value? What can I root myself in, put my hope and confidence in, that is undefiled, imperishable, that will not fade? Where? And the Bible implores us to say, trust the resurrected King. There's only one place we can put our eternal hope in, and that is a King that has conquered the grave. And it allows us to look beyond the horizon to another age and to another time where we will sit at the table of God and we will raise our glasses and we will cheer on the resurrected King, saying, praise be to King Jesus. Every great enemy, it has been conquered, friends, and let us celebrate. Where are you putting your hope? Please put it in him. And to the Christian, it is hard to cling to this hope right now, especially if you're going through difficulty and hardship. And so I think it's really important that whenever we go through difficulty and hardship, that we have a prayer. We have a way to cling to the resurrection. And so I just want to give you a prayer, submit to you that maybe this, and during the most difficult moments, is just what you can pray and preach to yourself. It's simply this: Jesus, your death is my life. Your resurrection is my hope. My confidence is in you. And you cling to that, friends. His death is our life. His resurrection is our hope. Where else are we going to go? We're going to put our confidence in him. If you don't know the Lord, you haven't trusted in Jesus, again, we're begging you to trust him today. We're going to have a prayer team up here in a few moments, and these people want to pray with you. They want to help you come to faith and put your confidence in him. So if you've never done that, here in a few moments, I'm going to encourage you get up and you talk to these people, because they want to help you know the Lord and put your hope and confidence in him. Or maybe you're a little shy and you're like, man, I don't know if I could show up and come to the front of anything related to Easter. And so, hey, if you just want to text, you're like, hey, contact me later on. Like, I want to talk to somebody. I'm just not sure here's the setting. That's okay too. We want to help you navigate that. Also, later on this month, we're going to have a baptism service. I love baptisms. It's one of those sacred, beautiful moments. If you're like, I want to take that next step, please do.